thrilling rescue. Edward Sherman, keeper of Bristol Ferry Lighthouse, saved 4 men from drowning Saturday evening. Edward Sherman, keeper of the Bristol Ferry Lighthouse, who has quite a record for rescuing people from watery graves in the vicinity of the ferryway, performed the most thrilling rescue Saturday evening that he has experienced since he went to the assistance of Albert H. Barney in the winter of 1898. Not feeling well Saturday evening, he retired early and about 8 o'clock was awakened by a colored man employed by Dr. H. M. Howe, who desired to cross the ferry. Mr. Sherman and his passenger started in the boat for the Rhode Island side, and when about midway across, the steamer Richard Borden passed. In the wake of the steamer, Mr. Sherman discovered an overturned yawl boat, and nearby were 3 men struggling in the water, while a 4th man was swimming towards Musselbed Lighthouse in the ferryway. Mr. Sherman bore down towards the men and with much difficulty hauled the 3 men into his boat. The man who was swimming towards the lighthouse was loudly calling for help by this time, as his strength was leaving him, and he was unable to make headway, on account of the strong tide. Mr. Sherman lost no time in piloting his boat in the direction from which the calls came, and upon reaching the swimmer told him to hold on to the stern of the boat. The New York steamboat was passing through the ferryway at the time, and as the bow light on Mr. Sherman's boat had gone out during the time the work of rescuing the men was in progress, Mr. Sherman shouted to the bow watchman to change the course of the steamer. Inquiry was also made in regard to what the trouble was. Upon being informed of the facts and that Mr. Sherman could take care of the man in the water, the steamboat passed along, while Mr. Sherman was engaged in steadying his big boat in the swells from the big steamer. The boat was already crowded with 5 men in it, and had shipped some water when the heaviest of the 3 men rescued, weighing about 180 pounds, was taken in. The boat was headed for the shore with the man in tow, but he said he was unable to hang on, and one of his comrades was given the job of holding him until the Rhode Island shore was reached. Here all were transferred to terra firma, and that all were glad they were living goes without saying, for any person acquainted with the running of the tide in the ferryway knows the difficulties under which Mr. Sherman labored. The colored man rendered what assistance he could, but became excited. 3 of the men rescued were Portuguese, employed on farms on Rhode Island, while the other was George Lawton, a well-known young man who resides at Bristol Ferry. Lawton was the man who was swimming towards Musselbed Lighthouse and was towed ashore exhausted. The story told by the men was to the effect that 2 parties of Portuguese men started Saturday evening for Bristol to attend a dance. One of the parties reached the shore at Bristol Ferry all right, but the other, which was being ferried by Mr. Lawton, met disaster, as above referred to. The boat, which was overturned, was owned by Henry Boyd of Bristol Ferry, and was valued at $50, Mr. Boyd having built the boat last winter. While the men were in the water, the boat drifted away with a strong tide, and efforts to find its Sunday and yesterday were unavailing. The colored man who engaged Mr. Sherman to ferry him across to Rhode Island lost a valuable diamond necktie pin during the time the men were being rescued.